Anybody who follows this channel knows that nobody goes harder on Gervonta Tank Davis' legacy than me. You understand? I've been asking for the better part of 2 to 3 years for this man to fight somebody that's a real challenge, that he's not bringing up from a lower weight class or bringing down from a higher weight class and draining them with a bunch of stipulations. And recently, Mike Coppinger has come out with some information that Tank Davis is allegedly facing Frank the Go Smart in this June. I think that's a fantastic fight for both fighters. Let's talk about why in this video.
The greatest, the greatest, the greatest. I know what I'm talking about.
You think you're tough?
That's it. It's over.
You be alright. You tough, right?
What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Tough Glove Boxing. First of all, as always, I want to take the time to thank you for checking out the content. Listen, y'all know I like to get y'all at least 3 to 4 videos out a week. Coming back from Virginia to Texas last Sunday, I have been sick and I'm still sick now, so I'm going to ask you to excuse my voice, and I have the sniffles. So I do apologize in advance if the sound quality is or the energy level is not where it usually is. I'm not going to lie, my soul glow is a little dim right now, but I'm back at it like a crack addict because boxing don't stop for nobody. And recently in boxing news, Mike Coppinger set YouTube, the YTBC ablaze with news that Gervonta Tank Davis is going to be facing Frank the Ghost Martin. I think that's a wonderful fight. Now, I've always gone in on Tank because I think he's a phenomenal talent, but he's not I feel like he's always punching below his weight. Okay, and if he's fighting somebody that's coming down, he's draining them, got a bunch of stipulations and so forth and so what. From what I understand, this is an even matchup at 135, no rehydration clauses, no stipulations. They offered Frank a certain amount. Apparently, he accepted that. And why wouldn't he to face Gervonta Tank Davis, who a lot of people consider the face of boxing? I don't as of yet, right? For my own reasons. But if you do, I have no problems with your opinion, right? But the fact is, I love this opportunity for Frank because I think that Frank Martin is capable of upsetting the apple cart. Now, do I feel like this is a cherry pick going wrong? Is Gervonta Tank Davis choosing Frank Martin in order to duck Devin Haney? I don't think that's the case. What we got to remember is that Gervonta Tank Davis had 1 fight last year. Okay? Devin Haney had 3, if I'm not mistaken, right? He had the George Kambosos, right? And he had Lomachenko. And then he had Regis Prograis, right? So Devin Haney has been very, very active, right? So I can understand why Gervonta Tank Davis will want to take like a tune-up fight before he goes, right? Before he goes into a match with Devin Haney. And I'm not saying that this fight is scheduled, that the Devin Haney fight is going to happen after Frank Martin fight or anything like that. But I think that, you know, Frank Martin is a great fight to have before you entertain fighting somebody like an active Devin Haney. So yeah, like I said here, so no, Devin Haney only had 2 fights last year with Vasily Lomachenko and Regis Prograis, right? But he's still been more active than Tank. And he's about to have another fight with Ryan Garcia. So with that said, Frank Martin, I don't see him as a cherry pick. Number one, Frank Martin is really a top contender. He deserves a shot at a championship belt. I felt like he should have fought Shakur Stevenson when the opportunity arose, but for whatever reason that didn't happen. I got on his back for that, but I am gonna applaud you when I need to applaud you, and I'm gonna criticize you when I need to criticize you. That's why we call this Tough Glove Boxing. True unbiased fight fan, and right now Frank Martin and Gervonta Tank Davis are moving in a manner that I'm feeling right now. Now, first of all, let's talk about how Frank maneuvered his way back into position. Shout out to him. And I believe that they are familiar with each other because we all know that they sparred before, right? This is what I feel like. I feel like Frank Martin could possibly upset Tank. Will he do it? I don't know. But the reason why I say that is because none of the fights that Gervonta Tank Davis has had, right, leading up to this fight, has really prepared him for a fighter like Frank Martin. right? We see Gervonta Davis usually fight smaller guys that come forward, no footwork or anything like that. And that's not the case with Frank Martin. And likewise, Frank Martin has never been in there with somebody with the skill set of a Tank Davis. So this is going to be a great fight. This is a fight that I think is pay-per-view worthy, right? Frank Martin is a name that we've been asking to be thrown into the mix for a while now. He's been putting on at 135. He's been in conversations with the Shakur Stevensons, the Tank Davises, right? He's been included in that mix of 135-pound names that should be considered top level, right? So now that Tank is coming off of almost year-long hiatus to face one of the most dangerous fighters at 135, I gotta say, I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. I'm going to give the young man his credit. I'm going to give him his credit. Now, is it too little too late? No, right? Because they both still relatively young. You know, very evenly matched. They both like same age. Let's go over some stats right quick, right? Both 29 years old. Gervonta Davis also 29 years old, 5'5.5". I think Frank Martin got him by like an inch or two. Well, Frank Martin got him by a couple inches, 5'8". He got a 68-inch arm reach. Gervonta Davis got a 67.5-inch arm reach. So Frank is actually by a little bit the bigger guy. Frank has footwork. He knows how to fight off the angles. He has power in both hands. He has ring IQ, and he's a dog. I think that outside of Gamboa, right? And let's remember, Gamboa wasn't the Gamboa that fought Terrence Crawford when he fought Gervonta Tank Davis. It just is what it is. He was far past his prime. You understand? But I think if you look at Gervonta Tank Davis' resume, right? With the exception of Isaac Cruz, who was really the only one natural 135-pounder that Gervonta Tank Davis has faced outside of Gamboa, who was already past his prime, I think that Frank Martin might be one of the toughest names on Gervonta Tank Davis' resume. And I'm curious to see how this fight is going to pan out because I don't think... Now, we all know Tank Davis fans, Tank can't lose. He can't do no wrong. He's king, big, whatever. Okay, fine. Now he gets to show that against somebody that if he beats them, I can say, look, you can't take nothing from that win. You can't say he was smaller. You can't say he didn't have the skill and ability. You can't say he wasn't fighting on an even playing field. So I think this is a fantastic matchup for Tank Davis. Also, we got to stop trying to force what's probably not going to happen, right? Tank Davis is not rushing up the 140 to fight Devin Haney. And I'm starting to feel like the Devin Haney versus Shakur's and the Tank Davises, that whole mixture of TFMO, that mixture, I don't feel like that's going to happen anytime soon. I think those fights are going to probably marinate for years, like Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, which is a shame because that fight marinated so long and needlessly. You know, nobody really wants to give Terrence Crawford the credit for beating Errol Spence the way he did, right? And that's probably because they didn't fight when Errol Spence was at his, or when everybody saw him as being at his peak, even though the fight before Terrence Crawford, he looked phenomenal, and nobody in their mama thought, who was an Errol Spence fan, that Terrence Crawford stood a chance. It wasn't until after Errol Spence got beat the way he did they start to say Errol Spence is past his prime. He's not who he used to be. He stayed in the division too long, along with the other 20 excuses that you guys made. But I want to go ahead and give a congratulations to Gervonta Tank Davis and Frank Martin. I'm definitely throwing my money behind this fight. I think it's a great fight. I think Tank Davis is starting 2024 right. And this is a starting fight of what we have to look forward to. I'm expecting to see him in there with the Edwin De Los Santoses, the Shakur Stevensons, the Ray Maritales. You know, this is a good time for Tank to step fully into his legacy right now. We know you're the cash cow. We know you got that bag. Shout out to Frank Martin for not being a diva, because the truth is, I don't know what he's making. Allegedly 1.5, I don't care. It ain't going in my bank account, right? But what I will say is this. He's going to make significantly less than Tank Davis, right? We all know that. But you have to understand when God gives you an opportunity. You got to understand when the Most High gives you a blessing. He sent the first blessing to Frank Martin through Shakur Stevenson, who Frank Martin pulled out of that fight for whatever reason, right? And we ended up getting the Shakur Stevenson versus Edwin De Los Santos non-action packed title bout, right? So Frank Martin, gets another opportunity, a bigger opportunity. Because if Frank Martin, no matter what he's making right now, if he beats Gervonta Tank Davis, that will probably be in the eyes of many, not me though, right? But in the eyes of many as the biggest upset since Errol Spence Terence Crawford, which really for me wasn't an upset. But let's break it down. It'll be a bigger upset than Mike Tyson Buster Douglas. If Frank Martin was to go in there and stop Gervonta Tank Davis. I don't think anybody would see that coming. I don't think anybody's going to see it coming now. Gervonta Tank Davis does have more fights under his belt. He has more years of pro experience. He has a more extensive amateur background. So I would say out of both of them that Tank Davis has the advantage in experience. Right? But in skill and ability and dog, I believe that they are equal. A lot of people say that Frank Martin gets hit a lot. But guess who else gets hit a lot? Gervonta Tank Davis. It's just that he's used to getting hit by smaller guys. And when he is fighting somebody bigger that can crack, right? He still gets touched up, but he spends the majority of the fight trying to lure his opponents into one punch, which actually does come pretty much most of the time. It's like Deontay Wilder said, right? Gervonta Tank Davis, he only has to be, perfect for a few seconds, right? But I think that with Frank Martin, that may not be the case because Frank Martin does possess the power. Now, what people are not used to seeing, they're not used to seeing Gervonta Tank Davis hurt. But let me remind you that Leo Santa Cruz did swell up Gervonta Tank Davis' eye. He did swell that up. So if Frank Martin manages to close one of Gervonta Tank Davis' eyes, and I would suspect that Frank Martin is punching a lot harder than Leo Santa Cruz. You understand what I'm saying? It's going to be an uphill battle for Tank. This ain't going to be no walk in the park for Tank, and I respect Tank for taking this fight. Some people are on here saying, oh, well, him taking Frank Martin is a duck to Devin Haney because they always say Devin Haney ain't a pay-per-view star, so why is he fighting Frank if Frank ain't a pay-per-view star? Or, look, I don't care about none of that. Frank Martin got the opportunity. He hit the lotto right now, really. He better be working his ass off. I don't want to say it. Look, my question to Frank Martin is, are you going to comply? Are you going to comply to Gervonta Tank Davis's game plan? Or are you going to enforce your own? Because Gervonta Tank Davis, from what I've seen, he needs his opponents to cooperate with him. Right? So if Frank Martin don't cooperate with him and forces Gervonta Tank Davis to do things that he normally doesn't have to do, because I'm sure Frank Martin is not going to come in there like Frank's other opponents. He's not a flat-footed fighter. He also fights off of angles. Like I said, he got power in both hands, right? He got speed. He might arguably be just as fast as Gervonta Tank Davis. And if you ask me, he's certainly more active. He's more active. Gervonta Tank Davis is very economical with his punches. So if you mess around and let Frank Martin run away with the early rounds to the point where you need a knockout, Gervonta Tank Davis might get upset, people. Now, do I want that to happen? Look, I don't care. I just want to see these two get it on and see who the best between them are. And whoever wins between them, I want to see them get it on with the rest of the best in the division so we can finally break it down and see who's the best. So if this is Gervonta Tank Davis' way of saying, listen, I hear y'all. Going forward, I'm about that smoke. I'm running towards that fire. Then I'm here for it, and I'm going to support him, and I'm going to put that money in his pocket for giving us the fights that we want to fight. That we want to see as fans. Now, Frank Martin, although nobody was really screaming for that fight, he was in the conversation. We already know Gervonta Tank Davis and Devin Haney, that has to marinate a little longer, apparently. Shakur Stevenson, nobody's looking at him right now, especially based after his last performance. He has to, show a little better of himself, right? And this fight with Gervonta Tank Davis and Frank Martin, they're on the same side of the street, is easy to make. Why not? Why not? Because if Gervonta Tank Davis beats Frank, are y'all all of a sudden going to say, well, who was Frank? Frank was a nobody, right? Because, see, that's what y'all like to do. You got to remember, last year when we was trying to get Tank Davis to at least accept the Frank Martin fight, everybody was talking about Frank Martin ain't do nothing for boxing. He's not a draw, this and that, right? All of these excuses. But now that Gervonta Tank Davis and Frank Martin are fighting, those same content creators are now telling you how good of a fighter Frank Martin is. And I get it. You got to build up the opponent for your fighter. And I agree with them. Frank Martin is a good fighter. This is going to be Frank Martin's toughest test. And I want to see if he's going to stand up to the challenge. This is going to let me know if he really was on a Keyshawn Davis level fight, or if he was ready for the big boys like Shakur and Tank Davis. And I would argue that he's taken the most dangerous fight at 135. Even though he didn't fight Shakur, Tank Davis is really still the most dangerous fighter at 135 from a skill and a power perspective. But I think that he may have met his match with Frank Martin. I don't think Frank Martin is going to lay down. I don't think Frank Martin is going to cooperate with Gervonta Tank Davis. I think Frank Martin is going to meet force with force. I think he's going to use his angles. I think we're going to see Gervonta Tank Davis not as sharp as we normally see him because he hasn't been that active. It's going to take him a few rounds to get, back acclimated. With that said, Frank Martin hasn't been super active either. So it all boils down to if this fight really goes down. And I keep saying if because even though Mike Coppinger, right, I don't see nothing about this fight on Boxing Scene. I typed in Frank Martin. Nothing recent came up for him. As far as Tank Davis is concerned, I did find something on, what was this? The Sporting News. Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin has Tank's next fight being revealed. So they're wondering, right? It's just a possibility. But then when you go to BoxRec, you don't see any date or anything listed. You don't see anything listed for either one of them, right? And here's Mike Coppinger. Gervonta Davis and Frank Martin have agreed to a deal for a PBC pay-per-view fight in late spring, early summer for Tank's WBA lightweight title. I thought Tank Davis didn't want the belt. Apparently, he took the belt, which is real strange to me, right? But it is what it is. I'm glad that he's going to defend it against Frank Martin, right? And they didn't just give him the Super WBA belt and just continue to have him fight people that we know he's going to beat. Now, Tank Davis fans, they know that he's going to beat Frank Martin. There's a lot of people that rock with Frank Martin that feels like he has a chance to upset the apple cart. I'm actually one of those people because I don't think that any fight that Tank Davis has had up until this point has prepared him for a fighter like Frank Martin. If you look at the style of fighters that Gervonta Tank Davis usually fights, right, since he's been pro, they're pretty much cut and paste, right? They're pretty much cut and paste. You don't get a lot of variation there. So I think that, if Frank Martin can improve on his defense a little bit, if he cannot be a fan inside the ring and really be the op to Tank Davis, we're going to get a banger. And, Frank Martin will stand there and bang with you. We saw him do it with Autumn, right? A lot of people criticized him for that fight. I gave him credit for that fight. Autumn was a damn good fighter. It just is what it is. He was a bronze medalist. Just because y'all don't know him, don't mean he's not a good fighter. And I feel like professionally, Frank Martin has had more looks as far as various types of styles, right? They didn't cherry pick each style for Frank Martin. He fought Michelle Rivera, who can be fleet-footed, who got a jab, who's long. He's had different looks. So I think he's well prepared for a fight with Tank Davis. I think he has the dog. I think that if everything he ever dreamed of happening could come true, it can, all in this one fight. You understand? Put those prayers in the air for the boy Frank Martin. Put your prayers in the air for the boy Gervonta Tank Davis. This is a good-ass fight. And we're going to get behind this fight. As far as this, Tank Davis and Devin Haney, we're not getting that fight right now. Devin is focused on Ryan. As far as Teofimo Lopez, we ain't getting that fight right now. We don't know what Teofimo Lopez is going to do. As far as Shakur Stevenson, he's still working out his contracts and everything with Top Rank, but we don't know what's going on with Shakur Stevenson right now. So why not Frank Martin? Why not Frank Martin? I think this is a great fight. Y'all get in the comment section. Y'all let me know. Do you think that this is a cherry pick that could go wrong? Do you think that Tank Davis chose this fight to avoid Devin Haney? Do you think that Frank Martin is going to shock the world? Do you think he has the ability and the power to hurt or discourage somebody like Tank Davis? Do you think Tank Davis is going to have to start a lot quicker in this fight? There's so many questions that need to be answered, and that is the one thing that has been missing from Gervonta Tank Davis fights for the past 4 to 5 years. The questions. Is this possible? We always heard Gervonta Tank Davis about the fight, and there was immediately he's going to knock that guy out. But this is one fight where we don't have that. And for that, I want to say thank you and salute to Gervonta Tank Davis and Frank Martin. If this fight goes down, I will support it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Y'all get in the comment section. Let me know how y'all feel about it. Locked in. Tough Glove Boxing. We out.
You ain't gotta go home, but you gotta get the hell up out of here.